Final day. Thank you for being here. We have a fantastic group, and we're going to jump right into it. Our panelists are going to start from the far. Louis, we'll start with you, and we'll go down the line and get into it.
Good
Thanks.
morning. My name is Luis Reyes. I'm the CEO of Kit Carson Electric Cooperative in Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, this is on. Hi, everyone. I've been here since Monday. I've been dreading this for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't think anyone would stay around, so thank you all for still being here on Thursday. This is great. The other thing I've been dreading is this 40-foot version of me above there. So you in the back, if you want to go with the wide shot, if you want to do some audience reactions, I'm good with all of that. You probably don't need a big picture of me. I'm Scott Engstrom, co-founder and chief customer officer of GridX. We provide what we call a utility rate platform to our utility partners to help them manage the whole life cycle of utility rates and programs and products so that they can successfully design those rates, work with their regulators, with their boards, get them approved, provide all the data they need for that. Once those rates are approved, of course, they need to engage with their customers and educate them and help them understand why they should enroll in those rates. So we have solutions to help with that. And then finally, a lot of the new rates that support decarbonization and net zero can be quite complex, and that can be really expensive for the billing system. So we also offer solutions to help get those in your billing systems, get them operationalized. So happy to talk more about that throughout the day, but I will pass it over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to echo Scott's thank you. I'm glad that we have some audience participation this morning. Glad that you guys are still here so that we're not talking to ourselves. Laura Ungwai, Chief Zero Carbon Officer at SMUD. I'm responsible for our energy supply, so our power plants, energy resource planning, customer programs in terms of distributed energy resources, grants and partnerships, and research and development, and also responsible for our transition to zero emission resources by 2030. Nice to be here with all of you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda Rome. I'm with Xcel Energy. What I do for the company is lead up all of our operating companies, of which there are 4, and I'm also the Chief Customer Officer. So you might know Xcel Energy. We're across 8 states, kind of going down the central part of the United States, in the upper Midwest, in Colorado, and in the panhandle of Texas over into the east side of New Mexico. We serve a little over 4 million customers from an electric standpoint and about 2.2 million from a natural gas standpoint. So we're pretty well known for our leadership in the clean energy world, and so I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but so happy to be here and be a part of this. So thanks all for being here.
So, Laura, we're talking about stage, and SMUD has been a big part of the conference the past few years, and we know about the 2030 journey, but maybe you can start us off on your progress.
Thank you. Making tons of progress. So our board had adopted a climate emergency in 2020. We adopted our 2030 zero carbon plan in April of 2021. And since that time, we've added or have in progress about 1,500 megawatts of new renewable resources. So either under construction or already helping to serve our customers. We also have another 1,500 megawatts that are under evaluation at this point in time. So it really excited to share that we have a technical path forward. So we do believe that we have all of the projects identified that we need to achieve our zero carbon goals by 2030. I think the only challenge that we're seeing right now is really around affordability. So I think what we've seen 2010 to 2020, we've seen renewable prices were coming down. I think the assumption was that those prices would continue to come down with supply chain constraints that occurred during COVID. We started to see those prices ramp up. Now, obviously, with the tariffs and the uncertainty of those tariffs, we're starting to see prices again continue to rise. And so affordability continues to be a challenge. So we'll see. But thank you.
And Amanda, Xcel Energy has long been a leader in pushing clean energy goals. There's a lot developing. Can you get us up to speed on where you guys are at?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2018, we were the first utility to come out and say, we're going to drive an 80% carbon reduction to 2005 levels by 2030. And then we followed on with that to be 100% carbon free by 2050. So as we sit here today, we have approved resource plans in place to reach that 80% reduction by 2030, which is incredibly exciting. Since 2005 or 6, we've retired more than 4 gigawatts of thermal assets. And in the next 5 to 6 years, we're going to retire 6.5 more gigawatts of thermal assets. So if that gives you a sense of the scope that we're talking about here. Now, I would follow on that, there's pressures associated with even our 2030 goal. We have the technological capability to get there. We've always talked about this goal as a 3-legged stool. Clean, but it has to be reliable and it has to be affordable for customers. There's always been tension between those legs of the stool, but there's even more tension now, and we can get into this in this dynamic period of load growth, of economic instability is a strong word, but challenges, and it's the tariffs, it's the pressure on the IRA and the tax credits. It's a whole host of things. I would add in there's a deliverability component. Transmission has to get built to be able to achieve that. So as I think about, one of the questions we talked about, Jason, was 2050. And I'm really excited to talk about that and the new technology that we have our eyes on to get there. But in 2030, we still have work to do. Not so much on the new tech side, but to make sure the policy is there, the execution is there, the projects are there and stay there to be able to deliver on that goal first. And I think that's where we're seeing some challenge and really have our eyes on how do we deliver the projects that we have with the technology that we have to hit that goal while we drive into new tech.
Thank you. I want to come back to something because he says something there. Stay there. The projects stay there, and we'll come back to that for sure. But Louis, you guys are working on an innovative green hydrogen project. So we'd love if you can share with the audience about that, but also maybe the long history of Kit Carson being a clean energy leader.
Yeah, thank you. So, Kit Carson basically started its kind of renewable energy journey, decarbonization, probably in 2005, when the members of Kit Carson, which are about 30,000 members, wanted us to be more renewable and less reliant on fossil fuels. It took us about 11 years to be not successful within the G&T world, a generation transmission co-op that served 95% of our power. Only 5% of our energy could come from local generation. And so in 2016, we decided to exit that. We paid an exit fee to leave, and it was really to attain higher renewable energy targets, and also to give the members, the owners of the co-op, more a say in their energy mix. And so as we move forward, our community decided that they wanted us to be 100% daytime solar. So in 2016, we partnered with Guzman Energy out of Colorado. In 2022, Kit Carson hit that target. And we did it with distributed energy resources. So we own and operate about 20 solar facilities located around our territory. As Amanda mentioned, transmission is an issue, so we kind of eliminate that issue by building locally within communities. I think that was important because then members saw where their power came from. We also looked at the affordability, which meant we went from escalating prices to fixed pricing PPAs to make sure that it was affordable. The next step in our journey was then to create that solar profile out into the shoulder times in the morning and night. So Kit Carson started to build utility scale battery systems. So we have 2 systems operating. Every new solar facility that we built and we're continuing to build also has battery storage in that mix. And then finally, the 2 last projects we really wanted to look at was how do you address wildfire issues in the West with renewable energy, and also keeping power on during these times. I think one of the issues facing us in New Mexico is power safety shutoffs. So we, and power safety shutoffs does the utility when the hazard is high, basically just turn off the power to community to mitigate that risk. On the utility, really after what happened in California. And so we've taken a position of what really do we do? Do we do that and transfer the risk to the end user? Or do we look at strategies with technology and with renewable energy to address those issues? So the third part of our project is to create microgrids around both solar and battery. And as you heard earlier, we actually are introducing digital twins into our strategy to make sure we understand exactly how much of the grid we can carry at different times, whether it's extreme weather events, or whether it's an actual fire. And so that all led to 2 and 4 and 6 hour battery, about 120% energy from solar facilities based on our peak, to our project that we're currently doing, which is a clean or green hydrogen project. And that's basically building solar facilities to create hydrogen through electrolysis, using wastewater, effluent water, and then clean it up to the level that an electrolyzer can use to create both the hydrogen and oxygen, then store that gas until we need it, and then release it through fuel cells, which creates electricity, put it in the grid at different times of the day, depending on time of day, time of year, which will get us, we expect this plant, and we're building 3 different hydrogen facilities, also a distributed model. So I don't have to count on transmission so much. I can use the existing sub-transmission and distribution system, but also create microgrids here so we can actually start isolating larger parts of our system so that we're not faced with power safety shutoffs, but we can mitigate fire risk. That will be about a 35 megawatt project. We believe, at least in the co-op world, it will be the first and largest hydrogen facility. I think the other aspects, besides using reclaimed or dirty water, is really building it on a brownfield. So one of our members, a big mining operation, there's 2 Superfund sites in our area, and we're utilizing both of those to both build the hydrogen facility and extract the water from it. The battery storage will be about 24 hours. So we're going to go from the conventional, 4-hour battery, and people are trying to get to 6-hour. It's really 24 hours of storage that we can have at any one given time based on the amount of storage capacity we have. I think finally underlying that is the benefits of economic development. It's really to put people to work using an energy project to do it. The Superfund sites were a result of a mine closing and basically being shut down forever. It'll put a lot of people to work in the interim. It does take us to over 2005 limits, a 90% carbon reduction from those limits. So besides hitting our ETA goals, our energy transition goals by probably 2035, we'll reduce our carbon footprint by 90% by 2028. And so we think, if a small distribution co-op can do that, then the larger players in the country at least should at least try to follow suit. And I think that really is becoming more energy independent when you do it locally with concurrence of the people you serve.
And Scott, you guys see this, and you're working with partners across the U.S. You're trying to enable them to be able to meet these goals. How are you guys maybe using the innovative rate design you're introducing to the market and working with players? How is that helping some of your partners, and how do you see that being a part of the solution to get us to net zero?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jason. I think thank you for asking that. It's really exciting, I guess, first of all, to be on a net zero panel, a decarbonization panel. I don't think it's controversial or political to say that what's happening today, the current administration is less supportive of renewable energy, and I heard the word challenges, I think, several times across the panel already. So there will be more challenges, and I'm really in awe of this group and what the challenges that they're trying to take on to achieve these really bold goals. And of course, what you've heard so far, which makes a lot of sense, to get to net zero, we have to take the carbon out of the electron. So we need a lot of supply solutions replacing thermal and fossil resources with decarbonized resources. That makes a lot of sense. But of course, the result of that, as you get closer to 100% net zero or 100% decarbonized or net zero goals, your supply stack is fundamentally changed. You have a lot more renewable and intermittent resources on the grid. You have a lot more, in fact, most of the service territories represented here probably have a lot of behind the meter, creating duck curve-like demand curves that are changed substantially. And so the chances that the supply and demand are going to match up throughout every hour of every day of every year are very low in a decarbonized world. And how do grid operators, which of course had knobs and dials, they could turn up and down the large central station power plants to meet demand throughout the day, when they can't control demand anymore because it's driven by the sun and the wind, what are the tools that they have? Well, that's why GridX exists. We think rates, price incentives, new business models that drives demand and customers to be part of the net zero journey for companies like these to rely on to dispatch when they need is really important. And so we see rate designs, correct rate designs, effective customer engagement around rates and programs that drive them to behave in a way that allow grid operators to effectively run the grid at net zero or fully decarbonized is very important. And so we do work with our utilities. Usually one of the gateway drugs is time of use rates. Provide customers with a price signal that there's a time of day where it's more expensive for them to use energy. And I know both of your utilities are employing them. SMUD was certainly one of the pioneers. We worked with them back in 2018 when you defaulted all of your residential customers to time of day rates. And that was a really effective program and great at showing that customers actually do respond, even though we know most of our customers don't want to be bothered. If you give them a choice of 20 hours of the day or 21 hours of the day, it's costs less to use energy and 3 hours more. Many of them will actually respond, and we're seeing more and more customers doing that. That's providing the demand flexibility that utilities need to continue to pursue these 80, 90, 100% decarbonized goals. And so we're really encouraged by that. We see the next gateway drugs as things like EV rates. Customers don't even realize they're on time of use rates. They just know it's cheaper to charge their EV overnight, and they like that. Programmable thermostats is another one where the dad gets to get some tech cred with a kid for putting in a programmable thermostat, but yet they're providing a resource for the utility then potentially to help manage the grid. And so all of these are really excellent examples of how not just changing the supply of energy, but also working with the demand side and with your customers is necessary to achieve the kind of really ambitious goal you have, and same for you, Amanda.
Can I jump in here out of order? Because I think your point on the grid side is really important, and I know that I don't know where all of you necessarily come from and where you're sitting in your seats at your various companies, but I know from my standpoint for a while internally there was discussion about distributed energy resources, and are we for or are we against? Like, what does that mean to be an integrated utility, investor-owned utility, and thinking through those issues? But I'll just tell you from Xcel Energy's standpoint, and it's been a journey, we need everything. We need all of the above, including DERs, to get to where we need to be with all our goals, including bringing on load growth. And so thinking creatively about that, in Minnesota, we brought forward, I don't know if I'd call it a pilot, maybe a program. It's a distributed capacity procurement program. We call it the DCP. And this is where you sort of think creatively about how do we make these DERs a real grid asset for us in a sense that they haven't necessarily been before. And what that requires is coordination. So the idea here is they're utility owned and controlled, but they're customer sited. So you're working with customers, you're working with the grid operator to say, where would this be most useful for the grid? And then we're actually approaching those customers saying, what do you think about a DER on your site? We want to be able to control it for the grid, but you use it too. And so there are things like that that I think about. I mean, we're talking about 400 megawatts to a gigawatt. That's our first slog on this to say, like, this is the range that we want to get to and see if we can kind of bring this to the next level from a grid standpoint and a customer standpoint, benefiting both. So it's a pretty unique program. We're really excited to see where it goes, but felt like it was a good follow-on, Scott, to where you were going.
Oh, Laura?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So just wanted to tap back on kind of the rate design and give some context there in terms of validating what you just said on the importance of rate design. So we did launch our time of use rates, our time of day rates. What we saw in Sacramento is we actually shifted our load. So we peak an hour before the rest of California. So during peak times of system constraints, oftentimes during that peak hour within the California market, we are exporting energy. And so we are providing energy to the rest of California because we have effectively shifted our peak away from those critical peak times.
You know, I'd like to also add, because I do agree we need to start looking at, as a utility, almost not where the meter is if I can use the asset or use a home to put a battery and create a VPP. What I'm most concerned about as we move these programs and why Kit Carson has been more active is we still have a lot of low-income people in our area. Rural co-ops serve a large majority of the low income in the United States. And so a lot of these programs, they can't afford, right? If you have a regular, or they don't have the capability to control that load. And so I think it's extremely important that anything that the co-op does when it comes to rate design type of programs is that everyone can participate. We don't want to become a co-op that has the haves and have-not. Those people who can afford these programs, because that just means they get a better quality of electric service, which means a better quality of life. And so from our perspective, the more that the co-op can do to facilitate these type of programs and to better get to understand what they can afford or not afford, I think it is very important. And when we talk about affordability, you know, we're starting to price out more and more what the cost of an outage is, mainly because we have a lot of people, at least in our area, where they have home medical devices. And so what is the cost to them if they lose power and they have nothing to back that up? And as a utility, the hardest thing for us to always predict is how long that outage is going to last. And so I think it's important that any programs that we do create in the co-op world apply to everybody and not just to those who can afford it.
I think that's an excellent point. This is not a panel on affordability necessarily, but I do think that a lot of the challenges we're seeing, maybe with the current administration, is some suspicion that getting to net zero means higher prices for customers, higher bills, and of course, you know, we're all trying to maintain safety, reliability, and affordability for our customers. So how do we do that in a way that allows us to get to net zero? There's a lot of investments to get there. Our low-income customers bearing a lot of the brunt of this. And I think this is where data and rate design, again, to my own horn, I guess, or where from our perspective, you can find in the data different ways that low-income customers are necessarily impacted, but you can also engage in it and communicate with them. I think things like time of use rates and rate options for those customers who are struggling, you actually give them the opportunity to manage their bill in a way that they haven't in the past. Traditional rates are, you know, a single price for volumetric charges, and you don't have any choices. You just pay for whatever you use. I think the beauty of time of use rates are that they can both help the system and they can help your customers. We've dealt with a number of utilities now that reach that dual goal, where they create system benefits by getting customers to move their load out of the peak times, and they achieve customer bill savings. And while none of that impacts, for IOUs in particular, none of that impacts their profits as well. So I think there's real opportunities for us to engage with our low-income customers. They don't have to worry about whether they're saving the planet or helping us get to net zero, but we can tell them that we have ways that we can help them manage their bills through lower-priced energy that's available to them off-peak.
So I want to turn a little bit to the challenges, and this is probably both for Amanda and Laura. One, there's a team challenge. Like, how do you keep your teams motivated? I understand the years and years of planning that goes into this, and then there's some disruptions. So number one, the team's challenges, and then how do you prioritize those challenges? There's the economic challenge, right? There's the technical challenge. You heard about transmission and policy. So if someone wants to take the teams or both, and Amanda, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I think maybe priority is where I sort of started, which we have a lot of great partners. I mean, the utility themselves isn't or at least one my size, is not the R&D arm of new tech. But we partner with Energy Impact Partners, which I know GridX is a part of that, and some other places that really look at that new tech. We are certainly really closely tied to that, but our teams are probably most focused on how do we deliver what we have planned for 2030, that 80%, which is incredible if you think about our footprint. So what we're spending time on now, and you raised this issue of like, how do we deliver on that? And I think the team is incredibly motivated by that because it's right in front of us if we can execute on it. And so what we've seen, though, in Colorado and Minnesota, we go through integrated resource planning. So we say, for example, we need 10,000 megawatts of resources, to deliver for our customers by 2030. And then we go out with a solicitation for that, an RFP. Who's going to be part of that? We bid in ourselves, other developers bid in. In both states, we've seen enough come through the solicitation, but given the amount of time that the regulatory proceeding takes and the inflationary environment we're in and the supply chain challenges and now tariffs on top of that, the supply chain challenges were already there, and then you put tariffs on top of it, uncertainty around the IRA, as we saw this morning even. Let's take Minnesota. Every single one but one project came back and said, we can't hold price. We can't go forward unless we renegotiate. In Colorado, this is public, we had to come forward to the commission and say, we need flexibility. If we want these projects to get in the ground to even reach the 80%, we need to think about what flexible regulatory tools we have for us and the other developers to come in and say, hey, labor rates went up 30%. So we can't hold that bid price that we put in 2 years ago. That's how long things are taking. So I think the team has been motivated by, we have to come up with creative solutions outside the scope of the normal path in our normal regulatory environment, the normal commercial tools that we've used. Those are not going to work as we try and achieve something that's never been achieved before in a very dynamic and ever-changing environment. So instead of being cowed by that, I see our teams really rolling up their sleeves because we want to deliver on those promises that we made, but we have to do it in a way that's affordable and reliable. We always say internally, we're super committed to this clean energy transition. It's been our North Star for a really long time. If it's not affordable, it'll slow down to a crawl. If it's not done reliably, it'll stop. And so that continues to drive us.
Yeah, I would say we have the same challenges. I think if you ask my team, they would say affordability and reliability are probably the two biggest challenges, right, which are huge concepts. Part of our plan, also kind of the three-legged stool, we call them our guardrails of affordability and reliability. Same thing. If it's not affordable, we're not going to be able to move forward. If it's not reliable, it'll stop the project, right? It'll stop what we're doing. But I think acknowledging the challenges of affordability and reliability is really what's helping to keep my team motivated because they see those challenges. And I think if we aren't transparent about what's in front of us, then it's very demoralizing to the team to not acknowledge that there are issues. I do think from a reliability standpoint, it's a technical challenge, it's an engineering challenge, but I have all the confidence that we're gonna solve that. I think as an industry, we're going to solve those challenges. Yes, we saw the outage that impacted Spain and Portugal. And so I think as we move forward, we're going to have to be really aware of the high penetrations of renewable energy resources and figuring out what that means when we've got inverter-based resources replacing traditional resources. But again, that's a technical challenge that I'm confident as an industry we're going to overcome. The one that's top of mind, I think, is really, again, that affordability challenge, because our customers are seeing impacts not just from a utility electricity standpoint, but from everything that's happening within their lives. They're seeing this affordability challenge. And I think we have to be mindful of that. Yes, we have some aggressive goals, but we need to make sure that we're not losing our customers in the process and that we're not doing this to their detriment. To your point of we have customers that can't afford their bills today. We have some of the lowest rates in California, but we do have customers that struggle to pay their bills today. And so we really need to be mindful of that affordability guardrail. Our board set a metric that we cannot exceed rate increases. Our rate increases cannot exceed CPI, which is a pretty aggressive goal when you're looking at everything that we're doing and the cost that's occurring. But we're trying to find efficiencies within the company in order to afford what we're doing. But again, that affordability is the challenge in my mind. And to keep our teams motivated, I really think we have to make sure that we're acknowledging those challenges and being transparent about it. If you don't recognize that there's an issue, you're not going to solve it. And I think recognizing that it's there, putting it up as the challenge for us to meet is a way to start working towards solutions.
I'd like to add, because again, we have a smaller team to address these issues, but I think what is really important, at least for Kit Carson, is then engaging the member, really asking them what is affordable, asking them what level of reliability do they want. And out of that, you can get a lot of information from the members, and I think that's been really a key to our success, is really engaging the member and really then being honest and candid with them. There are some things we just can't do. There are some price levels we can't hit, but given all the feedback we get, then you can actually formulate a strategy that you get consensus built by the membership. And so we do have meetings all the time with our members. Focus groups, we have regular scheduled meetings where we go out into our different districts to talk about the issues that are important to them and where does energy fit. It may not be, as you mentioned, on that day it may be the price of eggs, right? But when you take all this into you gather all this information, then it is easier to move forward with these projects, because energy, in my opinion, that drives our economy. And without a good, reliable, affordable that the members want, again, I think we've also looked, if they want it, most will be able to want to pay for it. And we don't have as much behind the meter as people think in our area, just because we actually are a pretty poor rural area. But I think member engagement, customer engagement is key to what we've done in this decarbonized area.
I think it also is really helpful when you have customers or other groups like NERC and others come forward and say the thing that your engineers internally are struggling with, or, because especially as the regulated utility going in front of the commission and over saying, like, listen, you're not going to get a better partner for the carbon transition, but right now, if we want to do it affordably and reliably, we need you to approve some CTs, some combustion turbines. We might run them 5% of the time, but we need them there. And that was a very hard conversation. It remains a very hard conversation. But when you have NERC come forward, or a MISO or an SPP come forward, or a customer, and echo that same concern, that same support for the need for reliability and the importance of it, for the teams, that bolsters them to say, all right, I'm not the only one saying this. It doesn't knock us off course of where we're going, but it's what we need to actually keep it going, to do it reliably and affordably. So I would add that to your point.
And Scott, you're kind of digesting all that, but at the same time, you're also seeing partners kind of increase adoption and trying to get more involved in the programs that you're offering. So there's definitely challenges, but there's also a lot of excitement in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. We are tracking, we worked with many of the utilities, most of them across the U.S. that are implementing advanced rate design, everything from traditional time of use, time of day programs to some very interesting dynamic pricing programs in California and elsewhere. We're certainly seeing customers getting more sophisticated and understanding and reacting to those price signals. I will say, however, we don't want to fool ourselves. Many of those maybe early green types are those who are early adopters. In general, when you look across your personas at your utilities, you know who those customers are. They're the ones that adopt quickly. I think the real challenge will be, as I mentioned before, managing a grid that is close to net zero, where you have so much reliance on demand side and customer and demand flexibility. How do we market to this group of customers that have largely don't care about their utility, don't care about, look at their bill, don't engage at all? That I think is going to be a real challenge. I think there's real advancements in automation. I mentioned thermostats before. The aggregator community, probably many of whom are here, are doing really interesting things about how to aggregate load, take on the risk and complexity and sophistication necessary for those customers who don't want to engage. I mean, we really see a world in the future where there will be very complex rates that most humans won't care about, but other technology companies can take on the computational efforts and the diversification and risk required to manage those for customers, offer them a more simple product. They take on the sophistication, provide benefits to the system. And so I think I'm quite optimistic about the future. There's many ways it can go, and we're seeing a lot of those happen, and they're going to have to happen fast for all the reasons you've heard about the challenges. I think, as Amanda said, well, it's all of the above, and this has to be one of them.
And I want to open it up to questions here. If someone wants to come up for a question, but while they're coming up for a question, Amanda, I know you guys are also thinking about nuclear, and that's actually come up throughout the conference, and so I want to give you a chance to talk a little about.
Yeah, I mean, we're huge supporters of nuclear power in the upper Midwest. We have 3 units, 2 plants, and we've gone before our Minnesota Commission and the NRC and received extensions on both of those plants, which we're really excited about. It probably makes up about 20 to 30% of our generation in the north, and it's obviously all carbon free, which is great. We are laying the groundwork, I would say right now, from a policy perspective. Of course, we all read about SMRs and all the work that's going on there and the different companies that are working and the hyperscalers and who's supporting who and all of that, and we're on board for all of that. I think we think of it as early to mid 2030s. I know some people are more bullish on the time frame on those, and I would love to see that happen. So we'll keep pushing from a policy standpoint, but we're doing work on the state side to make sure we're ready for that. So in Wisconsin, we got a bill passed for a feasibility study for nuclear in Wisconsin. In Colorado, this session, they actually changed the definition of renewable energy to include nuclear, which would never have happened a few years ago. So that's super exciting. In Minnesota, there's currently a statutory moratorium on nuclear, new nuclear, and for the first time this session, there was real discussion around how can we get rid of that moratorium, which is all really exciting. So we're really dialed in on making sure the state policy is there while the tech is being worked on and approved on this side. So when it's ready to roll, we'll be ready from a state policy standpoint to get that going, because we think there's real opportunity there.
HG? Can we get the mic?
Yeah, it's okay. Hold on 1 second. Check 1, 2. Okay. Quick question. Just in hearing the word clean energy mentioned multiple times and thinking of it in the framework of your commitments to achieving net zero, do you see value in really maybe unpacking the word clean and getting further upstream to the issue around health? So maybe it's going and leaning into healthier energy versus clean energy. And how would that impact the level of stakeholder collaboration, customer collaboration with an approach more on health versus clean?
Yeah, when we went out with our zero carbon plan, it was very much focused on health. We talked about air quality. And then when we look at electrification within buildings and transportation, really centered around health and indoor air quality as well. So when we're looking at electrification of within buildings and homes, that indoor air quality is a key part of that message. So I do think that it's a way of, it's less polarizing, right? Because there's two sides to clean energy, and I think there's those that are, for it and those that are against it, those that believe in climate change, those that may not believe in climate change. But from a health perspective, I think we all want to breathe clean air. And I do think that that's probably more of an acceptable term from not only our customers, but current administration as well.
Exactly. I mean, we say clean, but when we talk to our members, it's about clean air, clean water, what kind of air our kids are going to breathe. It complements our economy. I mean, we have, we're an outdoor recreation. And so people come up to our area because it's clean, it's healthy, you can hike, you can bike. So it's foundational to our message when we talk in public about the benefits of clean energy, one being health.
Yeah, I think about it as, and we have this conversation a lot in Colorado in particular, about where does our role in this transition start and stop? And for us, it's not just with the utility sector. How can we decarbonize other sectors? How can we think about it as, an economic health transition? So we think about it in a lot of ways. So when we're pulling off coal plants, for example, it's not just about, the greenhouse gas reduction. It's a lot about that, but we're also thinking about that community. That community has hosted us for years. So what are we going to do for the health of that community? Maybe, of course, there's like your body health, but also, how are we going to make it so no one loses a job in this transition? We've shut down, like I said, 4 gigawatts of thermal. We've never laid anybody off as a part of that. We also think about what are we driving in as far as tax base to that local community, because that might be the plant that's been there for 60 years that has fueled that school district. You can't just go, thanks, we know we're doing a good thing for your personal health, but good luck with this community. So we think about it more broadly and a more kind of full wrap on that community. And then we think about, even more broadly than that, how do we decarbonize the rest of not just the utility industry, but the transportation industry? Maybe there's a steel plant there. When we think about the Permian Basin and our SPS territory in the eastern New Mexico, how do we work to electrify those pumps and motors and everything that's going on there? So that's how we look at it. I don't know that if that exactly gets at how you're framing it, but that's where I went to.
All right, thank you. If someone has a quick question, we can take one. If not, I will. Looks like we will wrap up. But to wrap up, let's come back and look, everyone here talked about a lot. Would like you guys to maybe, and Amanda, start with you. Give your key action item for them to go back and to continue to do big things.
Yeah, well, I would say, look, from our seat, sometimes we get really focused on, and I'm talking about sort of big utility mindset, on the path that we've set forward and executing against that. And we're really proud of the work we're doing. But I know that a lot of you probably represent different companies who can bring to us a different lens. And I think about this DC program that I talked about. That is in combination with Spark Fund. And the founder of Spark Fund came to us and said, could we think about this a different way? So you all might have a slightly different lens on how to help us all get where we're trying to go. And I would encourage you to bring forward that lens, help us think about it differently, help us bring forward the innovative things that you all are cranking on every day, because we know we're not the sole source of those ideas and we need help delivering on this. We're really committed to it. We want to be partners in doing it.
I know we talked a lot about challenges, but I would just say there's a lot of new technologies that are emerging right now that are pretty promising. So don't get discouraged. I think that, none of us have the playbook on what this is going to look like in the future. And even if we do accomplish this in an area, it doesn't mean that those resources are available in your area as well. So you've got to be open-minded, continue to look at those new opportunities in terms of the technologies that are emerging, and find what's right for your utility.
My call to action is to fail. I guess to summarize what I was saying today, we feel like demand flexibility is a key to achieving net zero. As an industry, I don't know that we know exactly how to get the demand flexibility we need, so we need to try a lot. So my call to action is not plan to fail, but be comfortable failing because we don't know the answers yet, and if we don't try and iterate on different ways of creating the demand flexibility we need to achieve net zero, we'll never do it. And it's easy for me to say I'm a vendor. I don't have to be the utility that fails. I own that, but I will say one of the reasons that's often kept utilities from doing that is the cost, both from reputation and from financial cost, has been high. But the tools exist today to do small-scale trials at a low cost and low risk, to see what works, to get feedback from your customers, to find those things that are going to create the demand flexibility you need to achieve your goals. So go ahead and fail. Don't plan for it, but be comfortable with it.
Ours is to, continue to listen to our members, making sure that the members, owners of the co-op, understand that we work for them and that we're going to meet their goals. Be able to embrace emerging technologies, knowing that they're risky, that it's not 100%. I don't think anything is 100% in our world anymore. And then finding the right partners. Finding those partners who align with our mission and our vision of getting where we want to get when it comes to a decarbonized world.
Thank you so much for this great session. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Laura, Amanda, Scott. Thank you so much.